Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, April 7th, 2022, and welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we get you ready for the Orioles season. We know today is opening day for most teams in the league, but the Orioles don't open till tomorrow. But today, predictions. We hand out awards and preview the 2022 season for the Orioles as Matthew Ritchie joins us here on the pod. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So today we preview the Orioles 2022 season. We're handing out some awards. We're making some predictions. And joining us on today's episode, he's been on this podcast once before, and that is Matthew Ritchie, who's joining us here. We bring him into the pod. Last time he was here, we were celebrating John Means' no-hitter. About a year later, he joins us again. And Ritchie, how are you?
I'm feeling good. Thank you for having me back on again. I love chatting with you. I just realized your podcast voice has gotten way better since the last time we're on. You've definitely perfected your craft since we've chatted. So I'm really excited to get going.
Yeah, it's well, listen, it's been a lot of episodes. This is your team every day, and so it's a lot of practice. But you wrote a piece for Baseball Prospectus, kind of taking a look at the Orioles 2022 season and telling people that it's not all doom and gloom, as we know. So we're going to try to highlight some of that today. We've got kind of 6 awards/predictions to give out. So let's just jump right into it, because last year, I think the easiest award to give out from the Orioles media was Most Valuable Oriole. They gave it to Cedric Mullins because he was absolutely outstanding. So we're going to make our prediction first on Most Valuable Oriole. And I give it to you first. Do you think Mullins repeats, or can somebody else take that award in 2022?
I honestly believe Cedric Mullins repeats as Most Valuable Oriole, because when you look at Cedric's season, he had a couple very hot months in June, right before the All-Star break, and then his August was very, very good. But then he begins to slow down in September when the length of the full season sort of catches up to him. You know, he'd been up and down from 2019, and then his only full season with the Orioles was 2020, which is, the fake Twilight Zone 60-game season. And so, you get that fatigue where you're not used to the full 162. You're not used to the full travel. But I think with the second year underneath his belt, you get the adjustment to the full slate of games. So I don't see any reason why Cedric should drop off. He might be the most pure hitter on the team. He has the sweetest swing. He has the highest likelihood of just producing line drives out of anybody. And I think it's hard to argue against it's hard to argue for it being an only one-hit wonder stretch, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's, if he even comes close to reproducing what he did last season, I mean, he's going to be a shoo-in for the best player on this Orioles team. I mean, he was far and away the best player on the team, whether you want to look at traditional stats, whether you want to look at WAR, whatever it may be, whether you just want to watch him run around in center field. Like, he was the best player on this team last year. And for me, I struggled with this pick. I wanted to go Mullins, but I think at the end of the day, my thought is that, I think Cedric Mullins down the line is going to be a really good major league center fielder every year for a long time for the Orioles. But I do think maybe last season wasn't his peak, but I think where he'll kind of settle in for his career, it may not be that 6 WAR season that he had last year. And so my only thought was, if he's like a 4-win player and he hits, 290, and the home runs, they'll probably go down a little bit. Maybe he's a 20-homer guy, but he still steals 30 bases. I think if somebody else has a bigger jump from 21 to 22, maybe they win this award. And I'm going to predict John Means for this award, because I think even as good as he was last year, a 3.62 ERA in his 26 starts, and, he didn't walk anybody and the strikeout numbers were solid. He only threw 146 innings, and that was because he missed a couple months in the middle of the season with that shoulder issue. And for the 3rd straight year, John Means missed some time in the second half with an injury. So John Means has said his goal this year is to throw 200 innings. And if he throws 200 innings at even a pace he set last year, 3.62 ERA, there could honestly be nothing more valuable to the way this Orioles team is currently constructed than John Means throwing 200 innings and pitching that well. So for me, it's almost not even a shot at Cedric. But if Means does what he thinks he can do, I mean, if you look at the starters behind him, as you know, like there could be nothing more valuable than that.
We are begging for an ace, and we said it last year after the no hitter. That was the arrival of an ace, but then an ace has to be the horse for 200 plus innings, like you said. And so if he reaches that benchmark, then it's really hard to argue against him. Being the most important person on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and we'll see. Jordan Lyles isn't a great pitcher, but he's a guy who has a track record of throwing close to 200 innings. At the very least, if the two of them can eat close to 200, makes a lot of people's lives a little bit easier with how this pitching staff looks. But let's move on to our Oriole Rookie of the Year. And I've put a caveat on this one because if all goes well, Adley Rutschman will win this fake award of Orioles Rookie of the Year. He's the number one prospect in baseball. Once he recovers from this tricep injury in a couple of weeks, he should be in the big leagues. And so the caveat I put on it is Rookie of the Year, not named Adley. And obviously there's, two kind of headlining choices, but there's a bunch of different ways you could go here. So who you got the non-Adley Rookie of the Year?
I kind of struggled between this because it's all about who's coming up when for me. And Tyler Nevin excites me as a concept. He's very much in the Ryan Mountcastle vein where you have a ridiculous penchant for power, but does he break into a consistent outfield that, is filled and, has a lot more speed than he does? Or can he move into first base? And so can he get enough innings when he comes up to be a Rookie of the Year? But I think the easiest pick has to be Grayson Rodriguez, just because he's so projectable and he looks like a guy. He like when you're throwing 98 plus and you have a ridiculous off-speed selection that is able to make actual MLB hitters look silly and overpowered, it's hard to be able to say that if this guy comes up and throws 100 plus innings, that he's not going to be able to perform at a level where you think that we might have a future piece, for years to come.
Yeah, it is for Grayson. It's all about when he comes up too, because if he's up in May, then and he gets to be in the rotation for 75% of the year, easy. Like that'll be easy for him. He's going to be the number 2 starter. It could take him 2 weeks. He could be the number 2 starter on this team.
It's a very short list of starters, and he would leapfrog everyone in an instant.
Yeah, it wouldn't be hard for him. And like if he pitches as well as he could, like he could leapfrog John Means by the end of this year. I love Means, but in terms of ceiling, Means is nowhere close to what Grayrod is. But for me, I'm going to go with actually the other pitcher who I think we're going to see this year. And I'm going to take DL Hall. And I think that's because of something Mike Elias said earlier this offseason. And Mike Elias has been pretty clear throughout his time with the Orioles that he wants the prospects to each go through every level of the minors, master that level of the minors, and maybe he'll manipulate a little service time before they get to the big leagues. But the fact that he just kind of unprompted went out of his way to say DL Hall is going to be in the bigs this year and sooner than you think was really not something he said about any other prospect. And especially because he's coming off an injury where, he didn't pitch for most of last year. He made 7 starts in AA and then went out with the injury, didn't start throwing until the winter. That would almost make me think he'd probably lean the other way and be more cautious. But the fact that he said that, and with how good Hall looked in that one big league camp inning against the Phillies when he struck out 2 batters, was throwing 100 with a devastating slider. I think the Orioles' long-term plan, and it should be, to make DL Hall top of the line, like a Blake Snell style starter, where, yeah, he's not going to go more than 5 or 6, but it's going to be some of the best 5 or 6 innings you see, like when Snell won the Cy Young Award a couple years ago. But for DL Hall, I think there could be a perfect mold where he starts the year in Bowie, makes a couple starts, comes right to AAA, rolls through AAA hitters, because that stuff is just still too good to not be in the big leagues this year. And then when he gets to the bigs, I think it kind of becomes, he goes to the pen for a little bit, and he can throw some innings here and there, 1 inning, 2 inning, and then by August, he's in the rotation, and he's firing away. And all of a sudden, he has enough appearances by the end of the year where it's like, yeah, he's a future piece, and he was the guy this year.
And I think that's important because we're getting to an important point where we're like we have two separate pitching options for what our rookie of the year could be. And I don't know if you could say that for maybe the past 10 to 15 years of Oriole baseball. And it's a weird level of optimism where, everyone's talking about how great our farm system is, but that's not it. This is a new concept. And to think that there's two separate options between Grayrod and DL that, we could have legit guys at the top of the lineup behind or in front of a pitcher who's already a guy. It feels a tad bit exciting. I'm not gonna say we're hopeful. I'm not gonna say that it's good. It's positive.
We're excited, and we have this caveat because we feel again if Rutschman is up for as long as he should be, he will be the best rookie. And if you look over at betonline.net, they've got Adley Rutschman actually only the fourth best odds to win AL Rookie of the Year this year. So they've got Shane Baz ahead of him. They've got Julio Rodriguez ahead of him, and they've got Bobby Witt ahead of him. So maybe a little bit of value over there for Adley Rutschman. And you can get all your betting needs and all your lines for the future season over at betonline.net. The Orioles, well, they've got them over under 62.5 wins. We'll address that later in this episode, but you can get all your betting needs. And it's not just the lines over there. They've also got your scores. They've got podcasts. They've got sports news, everything you need. And not just baseball as well, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs coming up as well, and the Masters this weekend. So you can get it all at betonline.net, where the game starts. So we've got Matthew Ritchie here with us previewing the 2022 season for the Orioles, giving out some preseason awards. And we're going to move from some starting pitchers we just talked about to the bullpen, because every year since the rebuild has started, the Orioles have at the very least kind of found a good reliever every year. I think last year it was certainly Cole Sulser. I think they kind of thought it was Tanner Scott in 2020. That kind of backfired a little bit last year. Now, of course, both of those guys are gone. But in 2022, as we know from the roster we saw today, the kind of, temporary opening day roster, it's going to be a lot of new relievers getting chances. So if you had to pick out of that group, who kind of emerges as the relief ace by the end of the year, who would that be?
For me, this was honestly the second easiest one to answer. And I think it's very clearly Dillon Tate. Dillon Tate feels like the guy who was waiting in the wings behind Sulser, who was sitting with Tanner Scott, Paul Fry as people who we could put in when we needed like a mid to high leverage situation, but never could give the reins in the ninth. And I think that Dillon Tate might have the best stuff out of anyone left on this current major league staff. His ability to both throw like a high 90s fastball and then a wipeout slider that is almost impossible to hit if he's throwing strikes it's imperative for the back half of the bullpen. And I think that with Scott and Sulser gone, we're looking for someone to step up. And, Paul Fry is fantastic against lefties, and he's fantastic when you need him to be. But you need like an electric guy in the back of the pen. And I think Dillon Tate, we've seen that he has the stuff to do it. And I think given the amount of innings that he's going to be able to eat up, or he's going to have to eat up, it's going to be him this season.
Yeah, I'm on board. Dillon Tate's my guy as well. I mean, we had a couple of guys, Anthony Brady and Bill Hiesel, on from Driveline a couple weeks ago who worked with Dillon Tate the last couple of off seasons, specifically talking about what Tate has been working on. And they talked about how, he's got a funky delivery. Like there's a lot of moving parts when he pitches, and they've tried to not refine it, but just tell him what's going to work best. They haven't tried to cookie cutter him. They basically said, this delivery works for you. Here's how to hone it in and, throw 97 instead of 93. And get more movement on your fastball and throw he's going to have a completely different breaking ball this year that they worked on this offseason, completely different shape. And, that changeup is still going to move like crazy, that fastball like crazy. He got 3 saves last year. And yeah, he had a 4.39 ERA. He threw about 60 innings, but there were really good stretches. There were kind of rough stretches. And his walk rate was the highest of his career last year. They felt like they really gotten that down this offseason at Driveline. And so I think it's going to be a big year. I'm just going to throw in the name Felix Bautista because I really like him.
Love it.
Yes,
love it. But he's the dark horse.
Yeah, but I think Dillon Tate is definitely the answer here. But Bautista could be somewhat of a breakout player this year, and that's what I want to get to next. our breakout player of 2022. I think clearly not only was Cedric Mullins the breakout player last year, he was obviously also the most valuable Oriole. It's hard to have guys win both those awards because to go from what Mullins was to, the 2 years before to what he was last year, that doesn't happen a lot. That's how good he was last season. So it could be a small breakout. It could be a big breakout, but who breaks out for you in 2022?
This was the easiest one for me. Jorge Mateo is going to be the Orioles breakout player this season because we saw Jorge Mateo when he came over, we grabbed him from the Padres. And he has an extra base potential just based off of his speed alone. He can turn 1 into 2 and then 2 into home very, very quickly. I can't remember what the stat was, but I think he might have he might be statistically the 3rd fastest player in the league. And that type of energy it's impossible to replicate. And, we saw in the spring that his swing looks good. It looks very, very good. He's putting the ball everywhere. He's hitting it to all fields, and he is driving it out of the ballpark. And I think Jorge Mateo has the chance to put together at least, I'm going to call my shot here, at least the 2020 season. Because, of his 30 hits last season in the short amount of games he was there for us, 10 of them were extra base hits. And, yes, it's a small sample size, but he has the ability to, drive the ball into the gaps and then scoot around the base pass better than anybody else in the league. And so I'm excited. I'm excited for the lack of a logjam in the middle infield because, hopefully it's going to be Jorge and Ramon Arias next to each other for the season. But if Jorge plays the full season, we might get another special type of year.
Yeah, I there's a chance where Rougned Odor just kind of slips off this roster sometime early in the year. And listen, like for Jorge Mateo too, like even if it's not extra base hits, and again, he was a 280 hitter last year with the Orioles in those 32 games. It wasn't a lot of extra base hits. He did have 2 homers, but that speed, if he can just get on first, he becomes a difference maker. And that's the other thing. I would love to see a 2020 season, but even if it's like a 10-25 season, he's almost just as dangerous because he gets on first. He's on second most of the time, like more often. Right. He's a better base. He's faster than Cedric Mullins. I don't know if he's a better base stealer, but he's faster than Cedric Mullins and he's got good skills. So when I looked at this question, my first thought was Mateo, but I knew you'd be pushing the Mateo agenda all this season. So I just wanted to, I wanted to throw another name in there. And I just wanted to throw in Bruce Zimmerman because I think, Mike Elias challenged all of these kind of mid-tier Orioles pitching prospects to step up this week. And Zimmerman clearly has the edge over these guys because he pitched the best out of all of them last year, and he will be starting the home opener on Monday. He's the only one of those guys that's been named to the starting rotation so far. And, I get it. A 5.04 ERA last year and 13 starts. That's not great. But he was injured most of the year. And when he came back from that injury, he made 2 starts at the end of the year. They really hiked up his ERA, and he clearly was not 100% when he came back. And I just kind of want to throw those out. His ERA was more like a 4.2, 4.3 if you get rid of those last 2 starts. So for Zimmerman, I like his stuff. The hometown kid, he's starting on the home opener. Now, I don't think he's going to have a John Means type breakout season, but I think by the end of the year, we could be feeling good enough that at least Zimmerman out of this group is a piece for the future rotation, and I'll definitely take that as a breakout. But for Bruce Zimmerman, it could be a good year. We will see, but it's going to be really cool to see a lot of people from the area, from where he grew up, get to the ballpark on Monday to see him pitch in the Orioles home opener. And if you need to get to the ballpark, maybe you're not in walking distance from the stadium, got to take your car there. But if something's ever wrong with your vehicle, head over to rockauto.com because they have all the parts you need for low prices as well. And the best part about rockauto.com is that it's not like a dealership. And if you're like me and you don't know anything about cars, they don't make you feel bad about it. They help you out, find what you need for a good price. You can get your car back up and running again. It's a family-owned business. They've been serving customers for over 20 years, and it's the best place and the cheapest place to find the perfect part for your car. So head to rockauto.com. Let them know that Locked On Orioles sent you so they can help us out as well. But again, that is rockauto.com. All the parts your car will ever need. So we're here with Matthew Ritchie, who has been on this podcast before, a supporter of the Baltimore Orioles, and is writing about them a bit over Baseball Prospectus as well. And we're doing our predictions and awards for 2022. And we want to finish off with two more here. And the first one I want to talk about is a bold prediction. This is the wide open one here. This could be anything. So Ritchie, bold prediction for the Orioles could be about the team, about a certain player, anything for this season.
My bold prediction is that Austin Hayes hits 30 home runs this season. And I don't know if that's necessarily bold, but I do think that Austin Hayes was plagued by injury last season. He missed like 33 games or so with, hamstring issues on both legs. But Austin slugged plus 400, which is an absurd number for someone, of his. He's a thin, wiry guy. You look at Austin Hayes and you think, oh, he's probably going to steal 30 bases, but he's not putting the ball at the park. But Austin Hayes has legit pop, and I think even with the extended fence, which first of all I love the raised fence, love it, pushing it back, love every part about it. 30 home runs is on the way for Austin Hayes if he can stay healthy and put in a full shift in left field, because I think he's in the same echelon as power as Cedric. He's not Ryan Mountcastle, who clearly has the most. Ryan Mountcastle and Anthony Santander, who are the most powerful players on the team. But I think Austin has the chance to, eclipse that 30 home runs for sure.
Yeah. Listen, I'll just take him being healthy and playing 150 plus games. But I think we're on the same wavelength in terms of 30 homers. But I'm going to extend it a little bit. My bold prediction is that Adley Rutschman hits 30 homers, hits over 300, on base over 400, catches well, and wins the AL Rookie of the Year. And maybe it's not the boldest prediction of all time, because if he's as good as we think he can be, he should be in that running for AL Rookie of the Year. But, all rookies go through, a little bit of just a dip in their play, or they have some struggles when you get to the big leagues. I think Adley Rutschman could have a Wander Franco type emergence where it takes him about a week to get settled, and then he is off and running when we see him probably in mid to late April. And I think, we'll talk about how many wins the Orioles get this year, but at the end of the day, I think he is going to show us very quickly how good he is going to be in an Orioles uniform. And I think at the very least, it's going to bring more excitement for the fans this year.
Certainly. I think I'm right there with you. If he gets, we're bullish. We love Adley. If he gets here by May, I think he could put on a very, very special season, to the point where it erases the idea, like the haunting of like Matt Wieters never being fully the guy, and that we have a switch hitting catching prospect who is generational. Because I think teams are always looking for a generational player, and it kind of felt like this spring training where, the Squidward meme where Squidward is looking out of the window and he's locked in.
Yes.
Nathan Ruiz tweeted, the beat writer for the Baltimore Sun. He tweeted, "It's the Orioles are Squidward, and we're watching Bobby, Julio all have their fun, and all be the stars that we think they might be." And we're just waiting on Adley to get healthy. But I think once he gets healthy, he's going to join them in terms of excitement. And I would have changed my answer if I knew that was where you were going for. If you were going first.
I mean, you know what? But we're on the same. Listen, if Hayes hits 30 and Adley hits 30 and Mountcastle hits 30 and Cedric hits 30 again, it'll at least be fun. So the question becomes, we'll get to our final prediction here. If that all happens, they might win more than we think. But at the end of the day, we have the preliminary opening day roster. I think they'll make at least one waiver claim here on Thursday, but probably we have the 28 guys right now. We know the prospects like Adley, Grayson, DL Hall, and others will be in the bigs at some point. Your record prediction for the 2022 Baltimore Orioles.
This is tough, because if we're basing off last season, you and I, we felt way more optimistic about the team than we had in 2020 or 2020, 2019, 2018. It feels like we're trending in the correct direction, just in terms of players developing on the MLB squad. we might not have added a bunch of guys. We actually added, spent like the third least amount of money in the MLB. And so there's not a lot of material changes. We shipped out some bullpen guys. But I think if everything is equal and we get the young guys coming up, if we get Adley, if we get Grayson, we get DL Hall, Tyler Nevin puts in a fun little shift. If Yusniel Diaz comes up and, is a player, if we get consistency in the middle, I want to say we sneak out of the 100 losses in the column. I want to be optimistic. I want to say that we put up 64 wins this season. I know it feels weird, but I think what is that, 64 and 98. I haven't seen that record in a while, but that is I think that's the number that we're getting to this year.
We're on the same page. I am predicting that at the very least, there's enough young talent that comes up at the end of the year that the Orioles can avoid 100 losses. And I have gone down to the brink. I am predicting this team comes in 62 and 99 to the final day of the season and pulls it out to finish 63 and 99 on the year, just narrowly avoiding 100 losses, and at least starts a little bit, just the little up creep of like, all right, we avoided 100, now on to the next one. But Matthew Ritchie, thank you so much for joining us for this predictions episode. Listen, it's going to be rough to watch at times. We know that, still in the rebuild. But Friday, baseball starts at the Trop, Orioles and Rays. John Means on the hill, Cedric Mullins hitting leadoff. At the end of the day, it's still exciting to have the O's back.
Always is. Thanks again, Connor.
Yeah, and so that was Matthew Ritchie for our predictions episode here on the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow previewing opening day on the pod and breaking down the official opening day roster for the Orioles and talking, if they made any more transactions between now and then to add to that 28-man roster. But that's coming up on Friday's episode. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.